Hello everybody, welcome to my channel, The Real Super Sam. Today is a brand new top 10 villains list on this channel and I hope you enjoy. And welcome to one of the greatest and the very first hashtag Spider-Man Sunday of the 2020s. Here it is everyone, the list I bet you all are super glad to see uploaded finally, my top 10 Spider-Man villains. This is my list of my personal favorites, so some factors in this list will be based on my experience with the Rogue and also their media appearances. Hopefully, this list will get you interested in some villain you never cared about much before. Without further ado, this is the top 10 best Spider-Man villains. Number 10. Hammerhead. Hammerhead represents the whole down-to-earth mob boss enemies of Spider-Man's life. The way he talks and works is so unique to his rogues gallery in Spider-Man comics. I also like his origin and him fighting with his head. Growing up, Hammerhead always wanted to be a gangster due to an injury he suffered while being one. Much of his skull was replaced with an unbreakable steel alloy by forgotten Spider-Man rogue Jonas Harrow, giving his head a flattened shape. His history really made him a darker character and more serious, which is something comics need from time to time. There was one time he was even head of the Magia crime family. Number 9. The Rhino. The Rhino, a giant powerhouse with a gentle heart. Unfortunately, writers never show that, but when they do, it manages to put Rhino on this list. Alexei Sistovich was a thug who worked for Eastern Bloc scientists. The scientists subjected him to a process that gave him artificial skin covering, which granted him superhuman strength. After being empowered, Alexei Sistovich rebels against the agents who gave him his powers and destroys their lab. He is subsequently hired to kidnap Colonel John Jameson to get some space spores he had. That's when he met his greatest enemy, Spider-Man. His costumes are cool, his storylines are interesting and standouts. Hopefully he can be treated well in a future movie. Number 8. Kraven the Hunter. The main villain of the infamous storyline Kraven's Last Hunt, Kraven's goal is to capture every animal on Earth, and thanks to his stepbrother Chameleon, who he treats horribly, he hunts Spider-Man down until he defeats him. The stories that explore how Kraven thinks and has tortured and somewhat ruined his life just because of an obsession he has with Spider-Man puts him on this list. His battles are a bit more interesting to read, since he basically doesn't have any real superpowers like Spider-Man, but is still a major threat to him. He is the main villain in two great Spider-Man stories, Kraven's Last Hunt and Grim Hunt. He is also in the very first Sinister Six, making him a famous Spidey villain. Number 7. Electro. A power line man who, due to his own greed and narcissism, was in an accident being hit by lightning and gave him electrical powers that he uses to commit crimes and fight superheroes. Electro is on this list. He is one of the most entertaining and powerful Spider-Man villains. Ironic, since he is always in stories that focus around him being forgotten. Electro is a miracle of writing. A loser who gets powers is the type of origin for a forgotten Spider-Man villain, but Electro actually became interesting and a compelling character and villain for Spider-Man to face. Number 6. The Sandman. Sandman used to be my favorite supervillain, but over the years, he has dropped down to this number. His powers is the thing I like most about him. They can get so creative and fun to read about. His media appearances are done good too. I love them because they can show how creative he can get while fighting, changing his sandy body into countless forms. A big-time criminal who accidentally wandered into an experiment that reacted with his body, making his particles completely sand. He is impervious and almost can't be stopped. Number 5. Venom. Eddie Brock used to be a journalist, but after Spider-Man proved his article wrong about the rogue Sin Eater, he got fired and was about to commit suicide until the alien symbiote costume Spider-Man tore off himself latched onto him, creating a new rogue called Venom. Brock and the symbiote go after Spider-Man now for revenge and always refer to themselves as us. He is not only Spider-Man's powers, but he is stronger, faster, and doesn't activate his spider sense. His suit can also change color and move into other places and people to help him escape. If there was one Spider-Man villain to get a solo movie first, it would have been Venom, one of the greatest Spider-Man characters and a big deal in a handful of Spider-Man video games. Venom is also an interesting anti-hero. He first was one when he helped Spider-Man stop Carnage, and then he got his own solo series of him fighting Carlton Drake. Number 4. The Lizard. Becoming obsessed with reptilian limb reformation, Dr. Kirk Connors tried his lizard formula on himself, and it went horribly wrong, turning himself into the villain Lizard. The Lizard is Spider-Man's most sympathetic rogue. Since he can be good, and as Dr. Kirk Connors, he is one of Spidey's closest allies. While fighting Lizard, Spider-Man pulls his punches to try and not hurt Connors as he fights the Lizard monster. The Lizard is like a dark curse over Kurt Connors in Spider-Man, one that can always pop up again and cause chaos. Out of all of the animal named Spider-Man villains, I'm glad Lizard is an actual animal who fights Spider-Man instead of a guy in a suit. Number 3. Dr. Octopus. The first time I ever learned about this rogue was in my favorite movie, Spider-Man 2, and here, he is one of the greatest movie villains ever. For me, Dr. Octopus is Spider-Man's greatest enemy, the number one foe for Spider-Man to get into a battle with 4 mechanical arms fused to his body and a mad scientist's mind. He is a threat to Spider-Man in New York City. The best Doc Ock moments are when he's reasonable and works for the common good, even when it seems impossible for him. I also like his solo stories that are great character explorations into his past. Otto Octavius is such a great comic character, from his tragic past and then becoming a superior Spider-Man and even a superhero, beginning there since The Amazing Spider-Man issue 3. It's given him so much history. The great moments build up for me, I say, is his Spider-Man's greatest enemy, but not my favorite. Otto is also the man who first created the Spider-Man Rogues team, the Sinister Six, and is in almost every version of it. Doc Ock is awesome and a cool and powerful character. Number 2. Hobgoblin. Yep, the Hobgoblin. All characters, and he would be my number 2. Such an awesome costume and powers for a goblin. Better than Green Goblin, much better, which is one reason Osborn isn't on the list. Ever since the start of his criminal career, the writing has been there. We have seen Hobgoblin run away from Spider-Man to almost killing him. His whole criminal uprising makes Hobgoblin interesting and a complex rogue. I love his ghoulish demon costume in the 90s, my favorite look for the guy and for many supervillains. He is a very tricky rogue, having been assumed by a bunch of different people, making each story fit like a piece of a giant puzzle, making me want to read more and more about this rogue, and we also see his powers grow and become a more skilled goblin. Hobgoblin is my favorite goblin character ever. He is one of the best and even has stories with the Osborns, just one of my favorite Marvel rogues. And number 1, Mysterio. Mysterio, aka Quentin Beck, or the other people who have been underneath the fishbowl, is my favorite Spider-Man villain and my second favorite supervillain of all time. His design is just so cool and I am always interested in movie and special effect magic, and that's what Mysterio is all about. Honestly, Mysterio is a great video game villain. Hopefully he will have a big part in the next Spidey game. His powers lead to great moments that show off all of Spider-Man's powers. Mysterio has some of my favorite superpowers ever, like creating multiple versions of himself, making illusions of other villains. He can make Spidey not trust his own eyes and even spider sense, and disables his webbing. His costume as well is functional and always amazing. His history of special effects and stage magic is what I'm interested in most about reading Mysterio comics, and so when it's tied into a story about his past, those are my favorite Mysterio tales, and some of my favorite comic stories ever. Those are my top 10 best Spider-Man villains. There are tens more of Spider-Man rogues who are just as good as these top 10, but these were the ones I enjoyed the most. I love the character Spider-Man and all his supporting characters in his rogues gallery. Each one is so different and has their own history that I want to make a full video of them in each of these channels. Will be around for a very long time. I'd like to see your list in the comments below. With that said, thank you all for watching. I'll make more top 10 best villains lists. The next one I feel will be Batman. Bye guys, and have a great #Spider-Man Sunday.